I'd like to tell you a little bit about my favourite stone. And Ed Bohm the other day said his favourite stone was spinel. Ed was not telling the truth, it's actually opal. He's told me that before. But this is opal in the dream time. The Aboriginals believe that the rainbow creator came to Earth in the form of the rainbow once the tribes had stopped warring. So basically, it's about peace. It's a stone, the rainbow gem, a stone of good fortune. Opals first became notable during the times of Pliny, who wrote the first natural history of the world in about 70 AD. And he said that opals were the most important and the most expensive of all gemstones. And this is a 1601 first edition in English of his works. So that he also said that not only was opal the most important gemstone, he told the story about Senator Nonius, who owned a stone worth 80,000 sesterces and was offered that amount of money from Mark Antony. But Nonius wouldn't sell the opal because he loved it so much, and Mark Antony had him banished. So that's how much they thought about opal in those days. Shakespeare himself, the bard, wrote about opal. He said, that queen of gems. Napoleon gave Josephine a magnificent opal called the Burning of Troy. And Queen Victoria popularised opals during the start of the late last century, the century before, where she bought opals from Australia and gave them to most of her family. When opals first came on the scene, the turn of the century in London, the Hatton Garden dealers couldn't believe that they were real. They were so brilliant and vivid. So moving along, we see Cartier, Louis Compeau, Tiffany, both adored opal and featured them heavily in their jewellery. And this is when I first went up to the opal fields, no, just joking. This is 1890, a scene of White Cliffs. And White Cliffs lasted for about 30 years as the major supplier of opal to the world. And this little place is Coober Pedy in 1964. That was when I first, as a schoolboy, arrived in Coober Pedy, and this was the main street. And that's where my opal story began, because I was walking along the street picking up opals off the main street. I'm not kidding. So what used to happen is the low grade they couldn't sell, so they'd throw it away on the street in disgust. And then I arrived back in Melbourne with 2 pockets full of opal and cut and sold them, made £27, which is about 2 weeks' wages for an adult. Then I thought, this is the business for me. So here we go, the 2 brothers at the opal fields. Now, just imagine there are no banks and everybody wants cash. So that caused a little bit of a problem in its day. We'd have to travel around the fields with bags stuffed with cash. And these are the sort of characters we were dealing with, of course, so there's no problem about worrying about losing our cash. They used to dress up especially to greet the buyers and try and impress us. They'd even lend you their vehicles to get around the fields. Give you the finest accommodation, 5-star accommodation, with all the facilities. Now, this is what you call a long drop toilet. I don't know anybody here who's used one. Anybody? Nope. My brother. So this is a curious sort of thing, actually. I'll just diverse for 1 second. In the olden days, when we were looking at rough opal, water was a scarce commodity in Coober Pedy, so you always had your tongue. So you lick the opal to get the colour shining, to see what you actually had. And a friend of mine who came from Melbourne went up to Coober Pedy, and he said to one of the local people, "Where do I find opal, mate?" And this guy, being a bit of a comedian, said, "Listen, mate, go and have a go in that hole over there. You'll find something down there for sure." So this guy turned out to be a buyer, quite a serious buyer. And about 5 years afterwards, this fellow came up with this beautiful opal. And the buyer's sitting there, he's going, "Oh, God, this is really nice." He said, "Where did you get it?" He said, "You remember that old toilet hole?" So long drop toilets do have their issues. So You've got to be very careful in places on the fields. You don't walk backwards taking photographs because this is what can happen. And of course, in Cooper PD2, you've got always you're not allowed to take explosive to the drive-in theatre, which I think is perfectly fair. But if you do, you'll be asked to leave. So just moving along a bit. So Opel actually in the last decade has grown in popularity. And in fact, we've seen it featured in a lot of jewellery. Cynthia mentioned last year there are Opels everywhere. And it certainly was punching above its weight. And this is because the major fashion houses moved into Opel. And the second reason is we've now got China, the Chinese market, and they really love Opel. So Von Cleef, a lucky stone, as they say. But another little issue is that Opel is a very, very varied and broad subject. And you have to be a specialist in this industry to know what it is you're looking at. There's a collection market that people probably don't know about, and a wonderful, wonderful thing I think is the irrefutable evidence between dinosaur and the Opel. I'm sure we have some eminent people here who would like to tell us what this is. Anybody? Sorry? He said a coprolite, and he's right, you win the prize, sir. And on the top of that coprolite is a little bit of Opel. And as you all be aware of, this is actually a dinosaur turd. And this is a little running chicken-sized dinosaur, and this is one of the evidence we have about Opel and the dinosaur, but of course we have a lot more. This is an opalized pliosaur. We have opalized bones of all types and descriptions, fabulously interesting scientifically. So the centre of Australia was in fact an inland sea 110 million years ago when the world was joined, or most of the world was joined together in large megacontinents. And this is a section of the old seabed. There are over 300 shells there in many different species. This piece is an opalized bone, which is from a Hypsodophilontid. And this little animal was a little running herbivore, and it was attacked, and it actually survived because where I'm pointing is where there's some pathological lumps, which may be teeth or spurs, which the animal was injured, and then the bone grew around these lumps, so the animal survived. Here's a little bit of Opel. That's a section of that bone. This is a borer, for example, in Opel. And this is what we call a trace fossil, where borers have left these holes in what was opalized wood. There it is in transmitted light. And you can see where the little teeth have been grinding away in there. This all happened 110 million years ago. So can you imagine somebody, a valuer, for example, is presented with that? What are they going to value it for? That's very complicated business. These little shark's teeth, little gastropod, and two magnificent shells. These are brackish water shells, mussels from Lightning Ridge in Black Opal. They're very, very valuable. I think the one on the left we sold for $35,000, so I'll give you an idea of this curious area of the industry. This is an upper jawbone or maxilla from a mammal, an early mammal related to platypus. So the centre of Australia was an inland sea. That brown area now represents the Artesian Basin where most of the opal deposits are. There are various different theories about opalization, a deep weathering theory, synctectonic theory, and microbes have been found in opal, nearly all opal. So what does all that mean? You know, we need to understand these things. We need to understand the relationship between opal and the ground so we can find more material, but it's it's an area of science we're well behind with. These little microbes, for example, may well be 110 million years old. And what was their role in the formation of opal? We believe that they acted like little bioreactors. They ingested the materials around them and excreted other material which started to seed opalization. So how do we get colour in opal? Why do we get so many colours and an infinite variety of shades and tones? And that is because of the microstructure. when opal forms in spheres which are regularly arrayed, as it is on the left, you get colour. And on the right, you see that you get no diffraction of colour on the right because they're different size spheres, and this represents the common opal variety, or opal potch as we call it. So diffraction of light during certain wavelengths, you get some colours or all the colours of the spectrum. Now, Richard Lydickert said that if there was a scale of difficulty in the understanding of gemstones, then diamonds would rank 1 and opals as the most complex. I think, really what I'm trying to say is that I've just given you a brief of a certain area probably a lot of you didn't realise existed before, but opal is the most complex stone to value. As I was saying, we have the mineral type things. We have these sort of extraordinary specimens. This is where it's a hexagonal, perhaps it was a mineral, a crystal inside this cavity, and then the opal infilled it. Opal is amorphous, it's non-crystalline. We get these sort of things called yawa nuts. And sometimes we get really weird looking things, looks like the eyes of something or other. These are all collectible and sell for a lot of money. Opalized mussel shells. So that's just that side of it. Then we've got to say, well, what's the family of opal all about? We've got the praise family, we've got the highlights, we've got the opal without colour, and we've got the opal with precious colour or play of colour. This, for example, is Brazilian opal, which does not have play of colour, but it ranges in various different colour ranges in South America as well. We've got pinks and blues. Then we've got opal without play of colour, which is called fire opal. And then, of course, we come to the precious variety with play of colour. So we categorise opal type 1 in the nomenclature. It's not hydrophane. This is opal with a play of colour, which is substantially homogeneous chemical composition. In other words, it is all opal. This is a black opal we purchased some time ago. For example, just to give you an idea, this black opal's the rarest and most difficult to get. We transformed this stone by cutting it into 3, and these are the stones that came out. So just to give you an example, these sort of stones are very highly prized and rare on the market. The first stone we showed you before was on the market for a couple of years, but bad cutting meant that it just didn't sell, and it also made it look better. Another type of light opal is this light opal family. Can be extremely beautiful. Then we had deposits about a decade ago, 15 years ago, from Ethiopia came onto the market. The first stuff was from Wiggle Tenor. It looked like thunder egg type material, and you can see it's quite brittle and it doesn't really have much of a jewellery value, that material. But then we have the light opal material from Wallow, which is amazingly beautiful material, big nodules, and it took the world by storm. But what a lot of dealers forgot to tell people was that this material is actually hydrophane. There's a big difference between hydrophane and non-hydrophane. Hydrophane, it will absorb water or any liquid pretty much. So we've got this stone, it weighs 23.6 carats. We put it in water for 1 minute. You can see there's a bit of a halo around the outside. And as we keep going through, you see what's happening? See the bubbles? After 51 minutes, it's almost fully saturated, but there's still bubbles coming out of it. So if I did that in reverse, that's what would happen over about a 24-hour period. If you go backwards, it goes back to itself a lot of times. Sometimes it leaves a yellow marking. It's really quite incredible stuff. But people didn't know what they were dealing with. So that's why the ICA, our responsibility is we must change nomenclature. We must advise people and fully disclose, because the people of Ethiopia actually suffered greatly because people got disappointed because they didn't realise or know how to handle their material. So we're making changes at the moment, and those changes will go through to the nomenclature hopefully very shortly. Another type of opal is boulder opal. This is where opal and the host rock intimately are diffused together. So this is a layer of colour on top of ironstone, the host rock. Somebody said, we got an email the other day saying, oh, it's only a boulder opal, it's not a real opal. I said, what are you talking about? This piece here is a hugely valuable piece, and it's now in the Houston Museum, and it's probably the nicest boulder opal we've ever had. This is certainly up there as well. This is a boulder opal split. So something like that's worth about $60,000, and it's not very big. Yes, boulder opal is expensive in its lovely form. And this is a material which has been very strong in the last year and a half. This is what we call Koroit and Yawa material. It's opal matrix. So you must know the types before you can actually attempt a value, or this material has just taken the world by storm, really. And this is another type of material which ancient wood roots have been preserved inside the sandstone. Absolutely beautiful. Have a look at the patterning of this Koroit material. So my brother and I decided to get strongly into this side of the business, and we've just been inundated. We're just trying to buy as much as we can. Unfortunately, there's not as much out there as we would like. Other things we do with boulder opal, this is a matrix piece which we sort of cut into an Egyptian style. So once you know the type of opal, and clearly there's a lot of different things you need to know before you can determine the type, you also need to know how to value an opal. Well, the factors that determine the value are, first of all, the brilliance. How bright is the stone? You can't have an opal valuable that is not bright. It must have that factor. Number two, we get incredible patterns in opal. Harlequins are well known, peacock tail. We have Chinese writing down the bottom there, and they really are extraordinary. This is a butterfly wing, which is quite an incredible piece. We call that peacock tail pattern, and here's a close-up of it. It's just extraordinary, isn't it? This is a famous piece which created a record for a price for a black opal, and that's a Harlequin, 25 carats. This is another one which is extraordinary. We took it to England and called it the Union Jack. We took it to Japan and called it the Rising Sun. But actually it's called Supernova. And we get these sort of weird things too. It looks like a fried egg or something. So those patterns actually make up the value as well. Now the next thing we're looking at is transparency. A milky stone will never be as valuable as a transparent one, where you get layers of colour through the surface of the stone. We look at dominant diffracted colour. What is it? Is it a blue stone? Is it a red stone? Is it a blue-green? Is it green-orange? That's an important factor. And how thick is the stone? If it's flat, is that worth as much as a high dome? Certainly not. So shapes are also another factor. You can't value an oval commercial shape the same way you would value a Baroque, like down on the bottom. But sometimes the shape might add value, like the character of that butterfly wing we talked about before. So for in them you shall see the living fire of the ruby, the glorious purple of the amethyst, the sea green of the emerald, all glittering together in incredible mixture of light. So that's what Pliny wrote about opal. Now this is just a really beautiful opal that we sold about 20 years ago. It's just come back on the market, and I think this will create a record price. So have a look at that. So I seriously think it's the most interesting of all gemstones, and it's been a wonderful career. Damien and I, we've really loved it. And I thank you very much. And once again, Althoff and all your friends, thank you.